Okay, so let's talk about Spanish. I started my Spanish journey, or I started learning Spanish a few years ago, and I've continued, and I still continue. Language is always evolving, so ultimately you will always learn a language, you always continue to learn. Some people want to be as fluent as they can be, and some people are happy just to get by with a few words in the vocabulary. My point is that I've been learning Spanish now for a few years, and I think there's been some core concepts that I've definitely had to refocus on a lot of times and revisit in order to understand them. So language can be split up into reading, writing, listening and speaking. Speaking and writing tends to be your inputting into that, whilst listening and reading you are taking in information. So for me, for example, one thing that I struggle with, honestly, with Spanish is I struggle with the listening and the writing more than I do the speaking and reading. I think that's probably down to practice more than anything. When it comes to speaking, for example, I'm very lucky to have somebody in my life that I can speak to on a regular basis in Spanish. And the important thing to take away from improving your speaking in any language is having the confidence to fail in front of another speaker. And what I mean by that is I fail quite a lot when I'm attempting to speak Spanish. However, the failing is not, that's fine, you are going to fail, and you can fail as many times as you need to. That's absolutely fine, as long as you are learning from those failures, as long as you are doing something different after you fail. I think that's extremely important. So the lesson that I would take away from my kind of understanding of learning to speak Spanish and is having the confidence to fail. And it doesn't matter how many times you fail. It doesn't matter if you have, a really heavy accent, or you say the wrong conjugation of a verb or something like that. It genuinely doesn't matter how many times you fail, as long as you change it up, as long as you learn from those failures. When it comes to reading, one thing that I found extremely useful is things like comics and graphic novels, and even books for early learners. Certainly if it's in Spanish, I find that books like that are simple. Comic books are a really good example, because if you read a comic book, the speech bubbles say a character speaking, those sentences within those speech bubbles tend to be straightforward, to the point, tend to be in the present, but they can be in the past or future, but they are rather simple sentences. If you like reading more novels as opposed to comics, you can, start off with a really easy book, maybe one that you've read in English that you're familiar with. If you're really comfortable with a book, and maybe it's your favourite book, you could maybe try and find that in your desired target language, and there's other things available as well. So certainly things that are available are things like bilingual books. So one page will have the English and the second page will have the Spanish on it. That's really good for reading as well. Certainly that's how I've managed to improve my reading. Where I struggle is with the listening and the writing, and I think again that comes down to practice. I tend not to write in Spanish a lot. There are certain occasions for where I would want to write in Spanish, and in which I do. However, I haven't had as much practice writing Spanish as I have reading it, for example. One thing that I have tried in the past is to keep a simple journal of just things that happen in the day, and try to write in Spanish. Even if you make mistakes, again, that's fine. You can fail as much as you need to, because everyone's failure rate is going to be completely different. You might be stronger in one area than another, and someone else might be stronger in a different area to you, etc., and weaker in others. So it's all about just kind of rounding everything out to a level where you're comfortable. If you want to stop learning a language at a certain point, or if you want to try and go all the way and be as fluent as possible. Certainly, I think when it comes to writing, I don't get enough practice yet, or certainly not at the moment, for my skills to improve. And that's something that I do want to improve in the future. The amount of mistakes that I make probably are higher than if I, for example, was writing letters or something every day. Definitely for writing, keeping a journal is a really good practice. I unfortunately haven't really kept up with that, and it's something that I go to every so often, write a little journal entry just to keep on top of it. But doing a journal every day would certainly help as well, I think. When it comes to listening, again, I listen to Spanish quite a lot, but it tends to be through the immersive route of things like TV shows and podcasts and movies and music. Music is extremely important. I don't really tend to do as much as that as I want. That's certainly something I'll look to address going forwards. But I think one thing that I'd probably suggest is not to listen to the same speaker all the time. And what I mean by that is there are a multitude of different. If you're learning Spanish, for example, there are several. There are many countries that speak Spanish, and Castilian is obviously from central Spain, from Madrid, around the region, the province of Madrid. However, Spanish is a worldwide language, and I think having the ability to listen to Spanish, be it whichever country it's from, and being to understand, I think that's extremely beneficial, rather than focusing on, for example, one accent or one area of Spanish that you might be extremely keen in learning, which is great. One thing that I've found that has helped when it comes to listening to Spanish is not listening to the same speaker all the time. There are several types of Spanish out there, and I think it's really important for people to understand there are different accents and there are different, say, pronunciations of word depending on which country's Spanish is being said. So certainly for listening, I think that's extremely important as well. But yeah, I just wanted to have a general chat really about how things were going and where I am in my journey of learning Spanish. I wanted to make this video to talk about where I am in my Spanish learning journey, and I hope you enjoyed. I wanted to kind of keep things simple with this one and almost go back to basics, kind of keep it a talking to the camera type of video, and hopefully I'll keep this quite short once it's edited out. And I hope you learned something. But if you have any tips for me for learning Spanish or learning a language in general, because I think that they would all tend to work. If you have any tips for learning Spanish or any language in general, please leave them in the comments below, because I do genuinely want to try out some new tips and some new ways of learning. Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for supporting this video. If you liked it, or if you enjoy this kind of more laid back style of video, feel free to support me. You can do that by liking this video or subscribing or leaving a comment. And if you didn't like this video, sorry about that. Hopefully I'll make a video in the future that you will enjoy. And yeah, I just want to say have a great day and keep on learning.